All right, hey everybody. So tonight we're gonna make shepherd's pie. So shepherd's pie, I don't know if you've ever had it, but it was one of the few dishes that my dad actually knew how to make. And this is my garbage bowl. But shepherd's pie is basically just a meat base with mashed potatoes on top. My dad used to make it, and it was basically, he made it as like a meatloaf. Then you put mashed potatoes on top, and he topped it with peas. And for whatever reason, he would put American cheese on it. I don't know if he did that originally or if it was something that he did for us kids. But, you know, my dad knows how to make about 5 things. This is one of them. It was one that I've got a lot of memories behind shepherd's pie. So, and I haven't had it in a long time. So we're going to make it. We're going to start off with just peeling, and we're going to boil some potatoes so that we can mash them up and make mashed potatoes. So nothing earth-shattering here. Just get mashed potatoes, peel them. Then we're going to cube them up so that they cook faster and dump them into some boiling water. And I've got cold water here that I like to start my potatoes off in cold water. It doesn't really matter, but if you're doing a lot of these at the same time, you put them in cold water so it keeps them from turning brown, kind of like apples and stuff. All right, so there's one. Let me see if I've got a different peeler that works a little bit better. I know I have several peelers, but one that works a little bit better. Because that one, there we go, there's the good stuff. All right. So these are just regular russet potatoes that you could use for baking potatoes. Doesn't matter. I kind of wonder if sweet potatoes would work here. Never tried it. Might be worth a try. Good, decent variation. Then, you know, so this recipe it can be gluten-free. The only reason it wouldn't be is because we're going to make a roux using flour, but you don't have to use flour. You can just use like a cornstarch slurry, and it would be totally gluten-free and totally delicious. And traditional recipes, I read, which kind of surprised me, but traditional recipes use ground lamb, which I never really would have thought about, but it also really makes sense. But I'm not going to use lamb. I don't have anything against lamb, but ground lamb for me is kind of gamey, and I'm just not in the mood for it in my shepherd's pie tonight. All right. So after I get these peeled, this is my garbage bowls. One thing I learned from a cooking show, have a garbage bowl around. It makes your life infinitely easier. Assuming you use it and get all of your garbage in there. All right. So, I'm not going to do anything fancy with these potatoes. I'm just going to dice them up so that they cook pretty quick. And since we're doing so few potatoes, I probably could have gone ahead and got this water boiling and not had to worry about them turning any different colors. But I want, you know, the colors, the white color to be preserved, because this is what's going to be on top of the shepherd's pie. So I want it to be nice and white. I don't want it to be brown. The only browning I'm going to get is when we toss some butter on top and actually brown them, like intentionally. So breaking one of my usual cardinal rules here about putting my knife down and changing hands and doing everything. I don't like to do that because if your knife gets wet, or your hand gets wet, your knife gets wet, the handle gets wet, you risk all kinds of injuries that are very possible when you're using a very nice sharp knife. If you don't have a nice sharp knife, do yourself a favor or get someone to get you one, because you're going to hurt yourself and spend more money getting stitches than you would if you just spent and invested in a good knife. Plus, it's going to last you a very, very long time. All right, so I'm going to get these going. They're going to boil till they're fork tender, probably about 10 or 15 minutes. And then we're going to mash them up. And then we're going to make our mirepoix. We're going to get our beef going. And then we're going to assemble everything. So I'll be right back. We're going to start here with the potatoes. We got hungry. Do you guys wash your celery when you buy it? I'm going to show you why you should. Look at that. Look at the bottom. I mean, that's awesome, right? Like, we know that it came from the dirt. It came from the ground. It came from where it's supposed to come from. But all that dirt in the bottom also goes up into all of your celery ribs and everything too. So when you break them off, you need to make sure that you get in there with some cold water and just wipe that stuff off. I just use my hands. You don't have to use a sponge or a towel or anything, but make sure you're washing your celery. It's a good place to get E. coli and sick. Why did I pick shepherd's pie? Well, you know, the whole reason for this blog is for me to get back to my roots. So I started thinking about, like, which recipes do I know? Which recipes do I remember from my immediate family? And let's start there, and then I'll go and branch out and get recipes from my extended family. And one of the recipes that I remember that's a pretty easy one, but I think it's a good and a classic one, is shepherd's pie. My dad knows how to make about 3 things. Look, the guy's an excellent grill master. He can do, you know, the best barbecue chicken, pork chops, and steak and burgers that you can imagine. Outside of that, the guy knows, I think, 2 other things to cook, and shepherd's pie is one of them. And his shepherd's pie to me was so good, and I remember it so well. And there's actually, like, there's one memory that really sticks out in my mind, and it's when my little sister was born. I'll never forget, you know, I don't know why this is the one that always sticks in my head for shepherd's pie, but when my little sister was born, my mom was still in the hospital, of course. And so, you know, my dad had my older brother and I at home, and he had to feed us. So I don't think my mom made it ahead of time. I legit think my dad made it. But his shepherd's pie was just basically meatloaf with mashed potatoes on top, and for whatever reason, he put American cheese on top of it. I'm not hating on it. I might even put some American cheese on mine, but traditionally, I don't think it has cheese on the top, and it certainly doesn't have American cheese, just big old slices of orange cheese. But anyway, I was like, look, this is a good recipe. It's got a good story for me. It's a good place to start out at. And honestly, I don't know many people that don't like shepherd's pie, so it's a good start. That's where we're at, and let's just see how it goes. I'm going to go traditional, but I might put, you know, a little bit of American cheese in the corners or on the side of it, so we'll see. Stick around with me. All right, so welcome back. Where I left you last, we had just quartered up our potatoes. We put them in some boiling water, and they are now fork tender. And what does fork tender mean? That fork, I mean, I can't even pick them up at this point. Maybe they're a little over, but I don't think so. I think they're right where we needed them. But they've gone for about 12 minutes. Fork tender means the fork just goes right into these potatoes really super easily. Yeah, I can't even pick them up to show you. But anyway, fork is in there. They're ready to go. I'm going to drain these off, and then I'm going to use my handy potato masher. If you don't have a masher, you might have a potato ricer. I don't know why you would have a ricer and not a masher, but I did for a long time. But if you don't have either of those, you can just use a fork and smash these bad boys up. So let me drain them off. I'll bring you back here, and we're going to smash up our potatoes. We're going to mix in some salt and some butter. We're going to fluff them up and put them to the side, and then we're going to get started on the meat base for the shepherd's pie. Be right back. All right, drained off the potatoes. Now we're going to start mashing them up. But before I mash them up, I'm going to toss in a tablespoon of butter. And it just says salt and pepper to taste with the recipe that I have. So I'm going to start with, I don't know, about 2 teaspoons of salt. And I'm using white pepper. You don't have to use white pepper, but the reason that I'm going to use white pepper in this is so that it doesn't look like this little flecks of dirt or little bugs inside of the top of the mashed potatoes, because that's the first thing that you're going to see on the top of these is the mashed potatoes. That's probably, I don't know, a 1/4 teaspoon. We'll start there and see if I need to add any more. And normally when you're making mashed potatoes, you would add some cream and stuff to it, but we're not doing that for these because this is a topping that's going to go on top of a meat mixture. And I'm afraid, the recipe doesn't ask for it, but I think the reason it doesn't is because if they were too soupy, it would just make the whole thing soupy. And we're looking for a topping that's going to brown up. We're not really looking for some whipped up mashed potatoes like you would have, with the side of some ribs or some steak. So what I've done here is I've just taken the mashed potatoes. I've mashed them up. I'm taking a wooden spoon and I'm just going to fluff them up a little bit. And again, we're not looking for those creamy mashed potatoes. We're just looking for some good old fluffy mashed potatoes to put on top of our meat mixture that we're about to make. All right. So that's all I've done, right? I'm just going to set this aside. I'm going to have a brief pause, and then I'm going to get everything ready and set up for putting together the meat mixture. All right, so we're going to make what is known as a mirepoix. Mirepoix is a fancy French word for onion, celery, carrot. We're going to dice these up so that they're about the same size, so they all cook the same. And the only tips I can, well, here's one tip I can give you. I'm using a different cutting board because I don't want to get the onions on my chopping block here. Take your board, if it's sliding around, put a slightly damp towel underneath it. Put your board on there. It ain't going anywhere, okay? So, the first thing I do with vegetables like this is I cut them into manageable chunks. Because if you're trying to dice up a big long chunk of carrot or celery, you're probably gonna not have a good time. So we're gonna dice these up, and the easiest way to dice up most things, well, here we go. We'll go with carrots, right? Carrots, we're gonna make, first of all, cut off a flat edge of your carrot so it's not rolling around on your board. See, it's sturdy here. Then I'm gonna cut planks. So planks are just literally planks, right? And I like to go ahead and get all of the same thing cut and put everything to the side and then just go through the second motion, which is going to be cutting these into a dice. So the small part of the carrot doesn't need to be cut again. And what I'm going to do is get this off. That's some water on there. So what I'm going to do is just I've cut up the carrot, I've got my planks, now I'm going to dice them up. This really isn't, we're not trying for any fancy real presentation here, so we don't have to worry about everything being exactly the right size. We want everything to be just about the same size, so really just so that it cooks the same. So you don't have some stuff that's cooked, some stuff that's still raw. So celery took me a long time to figure out what seems like what should be an easy thing to do. Again, we're going to break it down into manageable pieces and then cut this into strips. You don't really get a plank out of celery, but you really get these strips, right? And then run your knife through them. They're about the same size as our carrots, so we're good to go. And this recipe just calls for 1 celery rib and 1 carrot stalk. So that's that to the side. Now I'm going to dice up, supposed to be a small onion. I might end up only using half of this because I want it to be about the same as this. Yeah, I think we're only going to use half of this. Hey, look, this is where your garbage bowl really comes in handy. Thank you, Rachel Ray. So, peel our onion. And, you know, dicing onions is kind of intimidating to people. It really isn't. It shouldn't be. As long as you're safe and you have a technique, it's really easy to do. So, cut your onion in half. Leave the root in. When you're dicing it up, leave the root in intact. It'll kind of help everything stay together. What I do, I get my hand flat. I go horizontally. So, and I'm cutting about the size of these right here so that they're all going to slice up the same. Then I go vertically. Then you turn it, boom. Just slice down your onion. Yeah, I'm not even going to use the whole onion, I don't think. Because even though I like sauteed onions, I don't want to kill this thing. So, there we go. We've got our mirepoix. Look how pretty. Yay! So, take our mirepoix. We're going to go over here to the over here to the stove. We're going to have about 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And we're going to saute up the veggies first. And then we're going to add in the beef. We're going to add in some stock. We're going to add in some flour. We're going to make a roux out of this thing so that it thickens up just a little bit. Oh, and here's one interesting thing that you could do with your celery leaves. First of all, they're edible. You can eat them. I'm going to use them and chop them up kind of in the place of parsley and just put them on top of the shepherd's pie when we're done, because you know it's going to need some contrast. It's going to be white. It's going to be brown. I'm going to use some green here. So, all right, let's get our veggies in, and then we'll be ready to go with our beef. All right, so in here, I've just got our Mirepoix with a couple tablespoons of oil, and we're just going to set this. We're going to do it on kind of medium-low heat and just let it go until everything softens up, probably about 10 minutes. All right, I'll see you guys in a few. All right, so our veggies have softened up. It's been probably about 12, 13 minutes. So now I'm just going to add in, this is a pound of beef. The recipe that I've found that I have, my dad always used beef, so that's what I'm using. But the recipe that I have, the traditional one, uses lamb, which I'm not using. I don't mind lamb, but ground lamb for me is just a little, it's just too gamey. So I'm going with some 80-20 beef here. I'm going to crumble it up into the pan, mix up into the veggies. When you cook your veggies, it's going to be on kind of a medium-low. We're going to crank up the heat just a little bit, and we're going to brown off this just like you would any other, you know, a ground beef recipe like tacos or whatever you're going to do. We're just going to crumble it up, brown it up, and then we're going to get our roux going and add in some stock and some herbs and stuff like that. So let's brown this off. All right, you can see I like to give it a little head start by crumbling it up a little bit with my fingers. If you are making like a bolognese and you want a really fine crumb, a secret I have learned is to use a whisk to break it up, because it breaks it up into very, very fine pieces. But that's not what I want here, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm just going to brown this off and break it up as I go. All right, so here we are. Our beef is nicely browned up. What we're going to do is I'm going to spoon off some of the excess fat that's here, because I don't want to strain it, because I don't want to risk losing some of my beautiful vegetables. You could strain it if you had a nice fine strainer, but I'm just going to take some of this fat off here. I don't want this to be too soupy. All I'm using is a spoon. I could use a bigger spoon, in fact. And just letting the fat come up to the spoon, and then I'm getting rid of it. Yeah, there we go. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add in. We're going to start with it. We're going to start making our roux. I'm going to leave a little bit of that fat in there to work with this flour. It's a tablespoon of all-purpose flour. And this is going to help it thicken up once we add in the beef stock. Just stir this around, and we're going to cook it just for a couple of minutes to get the raw flour taste out of it. And you can see on the bottom here, the flour is going to stick there. That's fine. When we add the broth to it, it is going to release from the bottom, and it's going to help everything thicken up. So let's let that go for a couple minutes. Then we're going to add in some stock, a couple spices, some Worcester sauce. I'm going to add tomato paste because I like tomato paste, and it also helps to thicken things up. You don't have to if you don't want to. You don't even have to use Worcester sauce if you don't want to. I like it, so I'm gonna. All right, so it's been a couple minutes. I'm going to go ahead and add in the stock. And this is 3/4 of a cup of beef stock. We want to stir this in, and we want to try to get the fond that's off the bottom of here, some of that flour. It's going to help thicken things up a little bit. So that's our beef broth. Stir it in really well. Scrape that stuff up off the bottom. Not only is that flavor, that's also some good thickening agent out of that flour. Look at that. See, it's already starting to thicken up. Awesome. Perfect. All right. This is a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. I'm going to add in just a dash of nutmeg, because I like it. Add some Worcester sauce. I'm only going to add maybe half a tablespoon, maybe 3/4 of a tablespoon there. And a nice big squirt of tomato paste. That's probably a tablespoon of tomato paste. So I'm going to stir all this up, and we're going to let it cook. Oh man, it already smells awesome. Sorry, Pop, but I'm already beating you in this one. Man, that smells good. I'm going to turn this down to low because I want it to have a chance to hang out. See how it's starting to thicken up already? Dude. All right, turn that down to low. Let that go for a couple minutes, and then we're going to assemble everything. One thing I forgot to add. We're going to add freshly ground black pepper. We're using black pepper here. You could use the white pepper that we used earlier if you wanted. But I'm using black pepper because you're not going to see it, right? So we're going to do this to taste. Let's add some salt and pepper. See how everybody likes each other. See if I need to add a little more. I'm tasting it off camera. You can't tell. Yeah, okay. That's good. No, needs a little more salt. I think I'm going to add a little more black pepper. Stir it up. I think that was a total of about 7 or 8 cranks of the pepper. All right. We're done here. Got my potatoes over here. I got my meat mixture here. Now we're going to get to assembling. So far we have sauteed off, we made mashed potatoes first, let them kind of chill out and hang out. While we sauteed off our mirepoix, we ground some beef, add some spices. I used Italian seasoning, salt, pepper, nutmeg. We used some flour to make a roux, used some beef broth to kind of make a sauce out of that, and added some salt and pepper. Now we're going to assemble everything. We're ready, right? We're going to put in a prepared dish. This is an 8x8. My dad used a 13x9 because I'm pretty sure that's all we ever had. We had, I think, maybe just one 13x9 casserole dish, because honestly it didn't matter if it was lasagna, chicken and rice casserole, chicken and cheese casserole, tuna casserole, whatever kind of casserole my mom was making, it came out of, I swear to God, it was the same 13x9 pan. We grew up pretty modest. We didn't have a lot of stuff. We moved a lot as Army brats, so we didn't have a lot of space either. Well, we had space, but it was more like, do you really want to move this again in a couple of years kind of space. So everything was pretty well planned out on my mom's part. So here we go. We're going to take our beef mixture. We're going to pour this into our prepared dish here. Remember, I preheated the oven to 400. We're going to bake it at 400. And then I'm going to eat it. I'm telling you. I do kind of feel bad though, because I love my dad's, but I'm telling you, this just smells so good. All right. Does this need to be perfect? Absolutely not. Does it need to be the way that you like it? Absolutely. If you want to make a meatloaf first and shove it in here, go for it. Obviously, I had no problem with it as a child, so why would I have a problem with it now? All right. Now I'm going to take, it's going to be one of these utensils here. I don't know which one yet. Either this spoon or this thing I have here. These are the mashed potatoes. So I did make an error earlier when I told you guys we don't want to add any liquid to this. I was supposed to keep off half a cup of the water that we boiled them in to mix in. So after the fact, obviously I had drained the potatoes. I didn't keep half a cup of water, so I just added half a cup of water that I had. So I'm going to just flop these in here so that they're in a pretty even layer, and then if I need to fill in the gaps, I'll go back and fill in the gaps. You know, I have to wonder if my dad used a box or a bag of mashed potatoes, because I don't know if my dad would sit around and have patience for making mashed potatoes. Or maybe he used leftover mashed potatoes. Hadn't thought of that one. That's a distinct high possibility. Although with 4 kids, I can't imagine there was ever really any leftover mashed potatoes because we all loved them and we all ate them. All right. So we're going to make these into a nice even layer. It doesn't have to be pretty. I mean, I guess if you were a caterer, but I don't know why a caterer would serve a big casserole. I mean, look, okay, never mind. I would eat a catered dish of shepherd's pie. I'm a casserole person, though, just generally speaking. All right, I'm not wasting any of these. I'm putting every bit of them in there. And what I'm supposed to do, which I know I guarantee you my father never did, is, in fact, I don't think my mom even did it. I'm supposed to take a fork and make these nice little peaks and ridges so that they brown up. We're going to do that. How, you say? I'm literally just going to drag my fork through here and make some decorative peaks and ridges and stuff. It's going to do 2 things. One, it's just going to make it look a little cooler. 2, it's going to give a place for some of this butter to go to get down into it. All right. So what I am going to do here, I've got 2 tablespoons of butter that I'm going to just cube up, and then we're going to toss it onto the top so that it just melts away into, yikes. So that's one. I'm going to go, that was a big one, but we're going to, I mean, whatever. I'm not eating the whole thing today. I'm just eating parts of it. So I've got space for calories, is what I'm trying to say. All right. Here we go. I've got shepherd's pie. It is assembled up. It's ready to roll. I made some nice little pretty ridges on here. And we're going to bake it 400 degrees for about 30 minutes. Really, all we're trying to do is everything is cooked, right? You could just eat it now if you wanted to. But we're going to try to get some browning on the potatoes, give a little bit of color, a little bit of crisp, and chow down, see how it is. See you back in about 30 minutes. All right, so it's been about 35 minutes. We're going to pull it out and just... All right, this looks good. Oh my God, don't drop it, don't drop it, don't drop it, don't drop it. I totally cheated and paid homage to my dad and put a square of American cheese on there. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not good. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I mean, what? Look, it's shepherd pie. Put however you want on it. In fact, when I was a kid, and I'm going to make fun of my son for a minute because he puts ketchup on everything. And I was thinking, like, why does he put ketchup on everything? But to be honest, now that in hindsight, I put ketchup on a lot of things too. One of them was shepherd's pie and meatloaf. In fact, I used to take my just mashed potatoes, I would mix it with peas, and then I would put ketchup in it and just whip it all up and eat it like a bowl. So I got to give that kid some slack because apparently he comes by it honestly. So what I'm going to do, remember those celery tops that I said that we had? I'm going to chop them up just like I would parsley, put it on top just for some nice green contrast, and you can eat it. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, why not? Why waste it? Why go buy some parsley when I have really what I need right here? All right, so this is just some celery tops, and I'm just chopping up like parsley, put it on there. I have a green onion. I had 2, but I dropped 1. These are actually from my herb garden. My parsley isn't ready yet because it's still 20-something degrees outside at night. So there we go. I got shepherd's pie. Homage to my dad. One of my more favorite dishes as a kid. Let's just tear into it. See how it tastes. Whoa, I gotta let it cool. I'm starving. I'm legit starving. But gotta let it cool, otherwise I'm gonna burn my mouth and I won't be able to taste anything for 5 days. So I'm gonna let it cool for a couple minutes and we'll be right back. We're gonna give this a big fat taste. All right, had a little cleanup. Been about 5 minutes. Still hot, but I'm starving and I'm tearing into it. So let's see how we did on our shepherd's pie here. I'm not going to try the part with the cheese first. I want to try it without it. And then we'll come in. I'll try some of that with the cheese too. Oh, dude, look at this. Oh, I don't know, can you see this? Look at how that, oh my God, the layers. This smells so good. I'm going to destroy it, no doubt. All right. Shepherd's pie, an homage to my dad, but I honestly did it much different than he ever did, and that's no offense to him. I just wanted to try the traditional route first. Maybe we'll do it next time just the way he did. Go meatloaf and probably a box of mashed potatoes. That is so hot. I don't know if you guys can see the steam, but it's so hot. Oh, man. That is like... I mean, that is a memory in a dish, man. I mean, it really doesn't taste a lot like what my dad used to make, but it sure as hell is really good. It's not bad at all. I like it. Now I want to try it with the cheese. I would definitely toss some hot sauce on this. Boy, yeah. That's good. There's some nostalgia. There's some good old home cooking. It's going to be 28 degrees tonight. I think I picked a great night to make this. Thanks for joining me on another episode of No Roots Cooking. Shepherd's pie, the way Dad kind of used to make it. Not really, but mostly the way that I made it, and it's really good. Give it a try if you want. Let me know if you do down in the comments below. And I look forward to seeing you guys next on the next episode. Thanks again for joining me on No Roots Cooking.
Roots without a soul, heart without a home. Back roads lead to nowhere, then you end up alone. Yeah, your heart is where your home